Just to add to what my colleagues have already said,
that means we are tinkering with the timeline for the election to give room. We have put provisions in place to ensure that when we say it's 6 years single term for a particular zone, it remains 6 years and it can never change. And that is why the bill is now proposing for the position of 2 vice presidents. One will be a vice president for succession, which will come from the same zone with the president, and the other one will be vice president administration from the other part of the country. And what that means is that in the event of death of the president or impeachment of the president, the second vice president's succession assumes office immediately and completes the remainder of that time and cannot seek any election. And also, in order not to incur extra costs on the country, this vice president will now have ministerial status, being the only vice president, being the minister, only minister from that state. And also that flows into the Electoral Act, where we're also seeking for an amendment to provide that elections to the offices of the president, state governors, National Assembly, state houses of assembly, and FCT area council shall be conducted simultaneously on the same date, which is to be determined by INEC in consultation with the National Assembly. The third one is a bill seeking to amend the Electoral Act to provide for the hearing and determination of all election petitions by the respective election petition tribunal and the appellate courts in accordance with specified timelines before the swearing in of successful candidates at election.
All right, so to discuss some of the issues raised and more, we've got Prince Adebayo, who was the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party in the last elections. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Chamberlain. Good morning, Chamberlain.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. So let's start off with it. There's just so many issues, some of which might have you might have addressed while you traverse the length and breadth of the country seeking the #1 slot position in the country at the time. Let's start off with this one, that some of the members in the House of Reps seem to be muting. Rotational presidency, a 6-year single term for president and governors, some of which you've heard before. So this matter being raised by those lawmakers at this time, how does it come across to you?
Profound ideas, but many ideas coming from those in government appear to be mere distractions, because the purpose of setting up the republic is for the peace and good order of the republic. And arguments around form are the forms responsible for the problems that we are facing. Arguments around forms don't work with me, because what are the problems we're having? Poverty, insecurity, inflation, unemployment, all these problems, are they arising from the structure of the government? Are they arising from the form we are adopting? So I don't think that that is going to be a solution. More so, are the people propounding these ideas, are they faithfully executing the present system that we have? Are you a legislator passing bills for the general interest, for the peace, order, and development of the country? Are you following the Constitution? Are you obeying the law? Are you accountable? So if you're not, what does it mean if we change your title or we change the form? Are you going to change your character and the behavior and all of that? So I don't see it that if you have a president who is unserious and you give him a single term, you have solved the problem. If you have a... Yes.
Is it about, Parliamentary body, is it about the, as you refer to, is unseriousness about the governor or the president? But how about this school of thought, which believes that if there were a single term for both offices, for instance, it will reduce the pressure of, #1, having to source all that amount of money to throw into campaign. Once you know, look, it's just this one shot, you just do what you can, you put in your best. But when you have to go twice for the same position, then certain people will tell you, okay, if you don't do this kind of things, A, B, C, D, or E, we will wait for you. We will not let you come back a second time. So those people tend to hold back and not give their best in order to win a second term. Isn't that a valid point?
Empirical evidence to back any of these speculative propositions, because number one, evidence shows that people who occupy important offices, whether they are looking for second term or not, many of them have a history of being unserious, unfaithful, and disloyal, and they are not acting in public interest. Even those who do one term, second term is almost a given. I don't think that it's harder to come for the first term. Second term is even like a cakewalk. You will see in our election, all of us who ran in 2023, we were all coming looking for the job from outside. But in 2027, one of us will be the one in charge of the system. So second term is not really always a problem to a politician. More importantly, people who practice money politics or any of those
Okay, Prince, I think we lost sound from your point. We'll try and sort that out. But basically, what Prince has said so far is that form to him may not necessarily be what the issue is. But I think when we're getting back, we'll also put some of these other perspectives, the kinds of persons who have spoken about this matter previously, who have been at the highest office. Does it count for something or not? So those will be some of the issues that we will raise. But clearly, at the moment, 35 lawmakers, actually, out of over 100. So, Prince, yeah, but we lost you at some point. So, yes, we heard what you said initially about form not appealing to you. But when we hear persons like former President Jonathan, he muted a similar idea. Former President Obasanjo also did say, look, something doesn't seem to be working with the kind of democracy we practice at the moment. We need to I think he talked about homegrown democracy or Afrocentric democracy. Does it then mean that those kind of persons, whatever point they have about changing something about a form which is not working, really isn't hitting the nail on the head for you?
To all of them, there's nothing new. They are always prescribing, inheriting one system. They will wreck it and then propose another system because it's an accountability issue. If you ask someone who has been president, like President Obasanjo, military head of state, and president for 8 years, he goes around. He's not happy that the country has not developed. He's not happy that there are no roads to his own hometown. He's not happy that everything is collapsing. He doesn't want to take accountability and say, I have not performed well. So he's going to tell you it's his system. Remember when we ruined the First Republic, using a parliamentary system that has worked for ages all over Europe and is still working in many places. When we ruined it, at the Constituent Assembly in 1977, they never talked about ballot stuffing, which they were doing. They never talked about harassing their opponent, which they were doing. They never talked about all those things they were doing. They said the parliamentary system, it was good for the British, not good for our culture. So we adopted the presidential system. And the presidential system produced Shagari, who was a bit mild. Thereafter, we have produced dictators. Almost every governor, if they were Romans, they would have been called emperors, dictators. So now they're coming back to say homegrown. Remember that the people are the same people who run it all the time. So whether you have parliamentary system, you have a presidential system, you have a rotational system, you have one term, you have these. Those who were in the military are now the one in the Senate. Those who were governors are now the one in the Senate. Those who were civil servants, accountant general, auditor general, they are now the successor governors. The whole thing is this. The principle around which we organize this republic and government. The principle is for selfless service. is for you doing things on behalf of the public. The crop of people who are being in charge, with very few exceptions, have been people who look at it like a business investment. So they band together and they come and take over the government, and then they capture all the revenue points in the government, they capture all the privileges and powers, they give them sensational awards that they don't deserve, they do everything they like. When they have exhausted everything and they run out of their tenure, they will say, okay, let us set up a new system. So it doesn't work that way. What is the principle of governance is very simple. Go and select about 25 countries in their different systems. Those who are using monarchical system, those who are using parliamentary system, those who are using federal system, unitary system, all of them have progressed. What does it tell you? Any form works, provided that you are dutifully executing the process. If you award a road for 15 trillion that could be built for 1 trillion, whether you are called prime minister, president, emperor, that corruption will kill the country. If you have one term of 4 years, and in those 4 years, you loot the country to stupor, and 20 years after you leave office, we're still struggling to recover the money, your one term is as dangerous as somebody who has 2 terms. So all of these things are excuses. The question is, when you wake up in the morning, how do you see public property? Do you see it as public asset? How do you see public time? Look at the president, look at ministers, look at senators. How do they spend their time? This is the time the public has paid for. Do they spend it studying, attending to your work, or they are going around congratulating each other and attending each other's weddings and all of that, and promoting each other's businesses? So this is what is wrong. I am not saying that the country is hopeless. No. I'm saying that if you don't change the personnel, if you have a driver who is a drunk driver, reckless driver, changing from Toyota to Peugeot to Mercedes to Audi, it's not going to change the character of that driver. It's not going to obey speed light, speed limit. It's not going to maintain the vehicle. It's not going to go on the errand you send him. It's going to be mismanaging. After wrecking it, it will tell you, sir, I told you, I don't have good luck with Peugeot. If you give me Volvo, you will see that things will be better. When you give him Volvo, he will read the Volvo again, the same result.
Mr. Adebayo, it's a very interesting picture you've painted, and in many ways, a lot of people will agree with you. Now, you talked about, getting a sample of different forms of leadership around the world. The truth is, in every country around the world, they find something that is peculiar to themselves and incorporate it in their style of governance. Even in the presidential system that we are practicing here, it's not the way presidential systems are practiced in places that are purist with presidential systems of governance. We have incorporated a lot of things inside of our governance, like the federal character idea, and things like that. So these are things that are, that show the character and the soul of the people that are being governed. But I do get your point where you say, it doesn't matter if it's 1 term or 2 terms, but we are looking at cutting down the cost of governance and reducing wastage. Now, what we've seen over the years is that with someone who has 2 terms in office, you basically spend the first term in office getting ready for the second term. And most of the time, very little governance happens at that time. When we start to see a lot of governance happening, in many cases, not in all of them, is towards the end of the person's time in office. Around the second term, you start to see a lot of projects and things coming up because the person knows he's leaving and has to have legacies in place as he leaves office. To reduce that first term wastage is the reason why a lot of these lawmakers are coming up with this concept of a 6-year term, 1 time 6 years, 2 vice presidents. You don't think in any way that this could reduce the wastage that we are talking about in governance if we take a look at some of the things that these lawmakers are saying?
Yes, it doesn't change the content of what is inside the house. Second is that there's no evidence to back them. For example, let's start with the last government, Buhari. His second term and first term was just the continuity of somnambulism, just sleeping from the beginning to the end. There's no concern that the president knew the date of the year, whatever. It was just there. It rained throughout. There's nothing there. And if you look at the government before the previous government, they were even spending more time. Obasanjo was able to say 2007 election was a do or die affair. He wasn't on the ballot when he said it was a do or die affair. He was interested in the installation of his own successor. So there is no limit. Even if you say, okay, let's do one term, they will, when they want to elect their successor, who wants to continue either to cover up for them or continue whatever arrangement they put in place, they will still do the same thing. The problem of our democracy is the reason why we have burglary proof in our windows. The burglary proof of your window won't save your life. But we are using it to escape the need to have a safe community. If you go around the world, when people do their houses, they don't put any burglary proof on their windows because they know that you have to maintain law and order in the public. What we are trying to do now is to treat our politicians as mindless kindergarten or infants whom we have to put guardrails around. Whereas we can just elevate the standard of everybody to say, before you let people come to public domain, how can we be minding the president as if he was a toddler who would not know the limit of his powers? Why do we have National Assembly there if they cannot question the person? And how do you save costs? If we are spending over $14 million to build the house for one vice president, and then you are going to have two vice presidents, are they going to share the same bed? So which means you have to build two houses for two vice presidents, and then when the president wants to hand over, which they rarely do, when he travels, you will be going to Vice President A. You will say, no, they are handed over to Vice President B. It's all kind of, it's not a comedy show. This is simple governance. Governance is not that hard. What it means is that you put people in charge who will understand the resources the country has, both human and material, who are servants. They know they are just stewards. Then they give you accountability in the assembly. What arrangement you can make if you have itchy fingers and you want to amend your constitution, you can now learn a lesson from what happens in other countries like South Africa, for example, that look, before you can be, the president will also be a member of the National Assembly, in which case he will come and be answering questions every day. It doesn't mean that when you do this, that the people in the National Assembly are not going to be looking for contract, oil block, and all of that. And when the president comes to the National Assembly, unlike in South Africa, when they'll be questioning him, challenging him, here, they are not going to be bowing down and worshiping him. Recently, the head of the most senior arm of government, the chairman of the National Assembly, because in the constitutional order, the legislature is senior to the executive, but let's leave that aside. The chairman of the National Assembly, the Senate president, went to Ibeno in Akwa Ibom State and said that he was commissioning a bridge as a representative of the president. There's nowhere in the world where the head of an arm of government, we have three arms of government, you cannot have Senate president saying that the president was asked to come and commission a bridge. But he, who is the head of his own arm, co-equal arm, is now representing the president. It's the equivalent of saying the Chief Justice says that I am, at an occasion, I'm representing the Senate President because he's too busy to come.
That's an interesting dynamic that you actually made me smile quite a bit because you are correct. It does seem a little strange. But for them, they may be looking at it as a better synergy, the executive and the legislator working together, you know, so that we can advance good governance. You know, what they would ask you, what problem do you have with them working together? Don't you want our country to move forward? But I want to be able to get your thoughts on something else. You've mentioned so far about changing character, elevating the office to where people of a certain character can only fit into those. How do you suggest that that is done? And you have also brought up a change yourself, talking about parliamentary system, which means that for you, that will be a more sustainable style of governance. Is that what you're telling us?
Have itchy fingers, they're looking for what to amend. So I'm letting them know that some of the easy things to do, which you can do. For example, even now, under the present system, the National Assembly has the privilege to invite the President to the National Assembly. They have the right to invite the President to the National Assembly to come and address the National Assembly as frequently as they want him to. And the President has the privilege to ask the National Assembly that he wants to address them, so that there's interactivity. We are not saying people should not work together. They should work together, but they should not err together. Working together means that it's like the way you mark exam in WAEC or JAM or in any university. Somebody who writes the question is not the one who is going to evaluate the answers. And the person who did the first marking, they take the first marking to the second group before it's finally graded. The system is that you want to make sure that human error and idiosyncrasies do not dictate state policy. So National Assembly is there to appropriate funds, to oversight the executive and the judiciary. And once they make that into law, then the executive goes to faithfully implement the law. And where there are questions as to whether they have done so lawfully or not, judiciary handles. So what we are saying is let's match the three arms together so that the error of one person transcends the three arms. That's what we're saying.
Let's get your perspective on this other matter, the minimum wage. Yes, it's been on for a while now. At the moment, the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, ALGON, the president said yesterday that they categorically reject the 62,000 naira proposal for minimum wage. He went on to say, look, that all the 774 local governments get about 18% from federal allocation. So that, he says, cannot cut it for them. There's no way they can sustain it. And that is in addition to some of the narratives from some of the governors, too, saying that that amount isn't sustainable. What do you think of that?
When it comes to minimum wage issue, there are 4 points that I recognize. One is that overall, the minimum wage is not a mechanism for permanent solution. Why? Because what is changing around is the general price in the economy, which relates to the value of the currency, also relates to inflation. So if you don't correct that, you'll be having minimum wage question for the next 30, 40 years. And that's not sustainable. So the solution is for Naira to be stable. If you look at the Moroccan currency, it's the same rate it was 40 years ago. That's the rate it is today. So you need to have macroeconomic stability. That's number one. Number two, minimum wage is a matter of law. And by law, the federal government has the power to set the minimum wage. And in setting the minimum wage, 2 factors are taken into consideration. One, you want to make sure that the wage is a living wage. You cannot obviously say, we are so broke, we don't have money, but we're going to be paying 2,000 naira per month. In that case, you're no longer a viable entity because there's nobody you pay 2,000 naira to that can survive on a month. So,
and today, do you think the states can sustain and pay that minimum wage?
Yes, if they are better run. The way they are run now, they may not even be able to afford to pay, other than after paying the governor and the assembly members, they may not have time to care for anybody. But if they are well run, they can maintain 100,000 minimum wage if they are well run. If they don't divert their resources, if they actually wake up and work. Remember, with respect to the local government, majority of their staff don't even have any work to do because the governors don't allow the local governments to function. So a lot of the local governments don't have access to their money. When the money is shared in Abuja, it goes to the joint account in the state. Many of the governors just outrightly steal the money. So local governments are like orphans. So they can, if you are trying to put the burden on them, they can easily say, we can't afford it. Not because they can't afford it legally, but because their resources have been confiscated from them. But any arm that works well can be able to afford a reasonable living wage. But labor cannot go to 250,000, 400,000. It's not sustainable. But 100,000, yes, doable, provided that after paying the minimum wage, you just don't lie down. You make labor more productive, you run the system more efficiently. Nigerian government is not even collecting up to 30% of the revenue it's entitled to. So they are not able to know what they can afford, what they cannot afford.
So if that were to be the case, if you say they can pay that, are we supposed to, restructure or rearrange how the revenue is generated across the country from states? Does the federal government continue getting the largest share? What would you change?
The argument has been, this question has been answered in 1977 when Shagari was addressing. Shagari said, look, the issue of revenue formula, there's no quick answer to it. The only way to know what every tier of government will get is to find out what responsibilities these tiers of government will perform. So if you want the federal to collect less, then you have to transfer some of the functions at the federal to the lower levels. So it is to whom much is given, much is expected. So if local governments are going to run the school system, food banks, and social welfare, then they'll get more money. If the states are going to run their law enforcement, police, and all of that, they get more money. But if everything is run at the center, a macrocephalic center, then the center will get more. So it's not a formula that is divorced from responsibility. Remember, this money is not shared for the glory of the governors or president or chairman. It is for public services.
Let me ask you this as you wind down. Police, that debate about reorganizing the police structure. I mean, you also fight for elections, and some of people who raise concerns, some of those who raise concerns thought, well, we need to find a way to ensure that they do not use it to emasculate their political opponents. Would you subscribe to multi-level policing?
Level policing has no alternative. The simple is, let me tell you how it is. It's a mirror. Any level of government that has the power to make laws should have the power to enforce their own law. You cannot say you have sovereignty. You say, do not cross the road. You should have power to say, when you cross the road, I arrest you. So you cannot pass laws which you have no power to enforce. Remember why the Egba lost when the British colonized Lagos, they gave sovereignty to the Egba nation, Nabeokuta. Why did the Egba lose their sovereignty? Because the British said the hierarchy of Egba was sentencing people to prison, and Egba had no prison. So Lugard said, why should I be maintaining prison for you when you cannot even maintain a prison for yourself? But what I want to say, in conclusion, is that right now, whether federal, state, whatever, we don't have police properly in Nigeria. What we have as police is just uniform supporters of government. They're not like enforcing the law. So we need to do two things. Make police multi-level and also change the philosophy of policing. That is about law enforcement. It's not about providing guards to those in authority. It's about making sure that our laws are obeyed and can be done at any level.
All right, then Prince Adewale Adebayo was the presidential candidate of the SDP in the 2023 elections. Thank you for your time here today.
All of your team, and God bless Nigeria.
All right. Okay, so we'll be back and take it a little further, but this multi-level policing has been on for a while. But just give us a moment. We will be right back.